Today's character was born a slave, and in his youth, he became a pirate and then one of the assassins. He has many adventures and tours in the world of freeing slaves, and he gained the respect of the assassins during his life and even after his death. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the first video in English on our channel, which will be about the assassin Adéwalé. Before we start, don't forget to pray for Palestine, and don't forget to press the like button so that the video reaches more people, and subscribe if you are not subscribed. And I will see you after the intro.
I was born into slavery, deprived of any right, of any faith. I was sold, traded for labor.
Adéwalé was born in 1692 in Trinidad as a slave working on sugar plantations. He lived a life of slavery throughout his upbringing and often looked for ways to gain his freedom by escaping. However, the life of a runaway slave was difficult and fraught with dangers, but in the year 1708 the golden opportunity came to him when pirates attacked the farm where he worked and raided the warehouse. Adéwalé killed his master, took a box of sugar, and joined the pirates in the plundering process as if he were one of them. The pirates were surprised. Initially indifferent to his presence, they were nonetheless happy to have his help and welcomed him among them. Adéwalé continued sailing with this crew for several years, learning the skills of a pirate and a sailor. But, in 1715, their ship ran aground off the coast of Havana and they were captured by the Spanish authorities. Since Adéwalé was fluent in English, French, and Spanish, his captors eventually decided to send him to Spain to be a translator, and he was imprisoned on a ship in the Spanish treasure fleet. There, Adéwalé found himself in chains alongside the pirate Edward Kenway, who was also deported to Spain. Together, the two broke free from their chains, and after killing the guards, they freed the captured pirates and commandeered a ship for themselves, which Kenway decided to name the Jackdaw, then sailed to the island of Nassau, which is considered a pirate republic. After their arrival, Edward introduced his new friend Adéwalé to his fellow pirates, Benjamin Hornigold, Edward Thatch, and James Kidd. During his time on the Jackdaw, Adéwalé served Edward diligently, ensuring that the ship was in seaworthy condition, and keeping the crew organized. But, he grew disillusioned with his captain's behavior over time, as Edward was more concerned with the pursuit of spoils than with the democratic ideals of the pirate republic. Adéwalé was also distrustful of Bartholomew Roberts, with whom Edward began interacting regularly in his search for the legendary observatory. 1719, after 4 years of work on the Jackdaw, Adéwalé sailed with Edward on a voyage to Long Bay Island in Jamaica to meet Roberts, who claimed the island as the location of the observatory. After Edward and Roberts left the ship and entered the forest, Roberts' crew attacked the Jackdaw and tried to capture its crew. Adéwalé took control of the ship and sailed it to safety, expressing his regret for abandoning his captain, but he believed that he had made the right decision. Adéwalé first encountered the assassins in 1716, when Edward visited their headquarters in Tulum at the request of James Kidd. There, Adéwalé saw in them a kind who fought for something greater than themselves, which he greatly respected. After several months of searching, news reached Tulum that Edward had been imprisoned in Port Royal, with Mary Read and Bonny. Adéwalé helped Otabai plan their rescue. But unfortunately, Mary died inside the prison during an attempt to rescue her, and Otabai was able to rescue both Edward and Anne. A short time later, Adéwalé traveled to Kingston to deliver the Jackdaw to Edward, pushing his former commander onto a new path. Then he returned to Tulum. Shortly after his arrival, he was again joined by Edward, who chose to consider the possibility of improving himself as one of the assassins. Together, the two friends fought side by side with Otabai and his assassins to repel the attack on the island from the Templars. 2 years later, Adéwalé traveled with Otabai to the observatory and helped him find the device and stop it. Over the years, Adéwalé became a skilled and feared assassin and sailor. In the year 1735, Adéwalé was captain of a ship called the Victoire, and was tasked with eliminating a French admiral belonging to the Templars, whose ship was passing near Saint-Domingue. Adéwalé disables the Templars' ship, boards it, and kills the admiral, and obtains a package intended for Bastien Joseph, which contains an artifact known as the Precursor Box. Shortly after Adéwallé's attack on the admiral's ship, he found his ship surrounded by a French fleet and was forced to flee through an approaching storm in order to escape. Although he escaped in time, the Victoire was shipwrecked and Adéwalé found himself washed ashore near the city of Port-au-Prince. There he found himself confronted once again with the slave trade, which was increasingly prevalent in the French colony. Within moments of waking up on the beach, Adéwalé had to rescue a runaway slave from her master, so Adéwalé killed him with a cleaver he had found on the beach. After he rescues the woman, she tells him that he can find Bastien in the brothel owned by Mrs. Bastien. After going there, Adéwalé hesitated to hand over the package he had taken from the admiral to Madame Bastien, so she directed him to find a person named Augustin Dufour. After Adéwalé was able to find Augustine's headquarters, he found that Augustine and his fellow resistance fighters were fighting a group of slave sellers who were able to locate them. Adéwalé killed the slave sellers and prevented any of them from escaping. Augustine then offered him some new equipment and upgrades in exchange for his help in freeing any slaves he could help before he returned to the assassin brotherhood. With the help of freed slaves, Augustine persuaded Adéwalé to seize a slave ship anchored in the harbor in order to free the slaves trapped below deck en masse. This is what Adéwalé did, and after completing the mission, Adéwalé took the ship as its new owner. He also trained Augustine on navigation and sea methods so that he would diversify sailing on the ship after Adéwalé's departure. Returning to Madame Bastien, she commissioned Adéwalé to infiltrate the palace of Governor Pierre Marquis de Fayette, in order to find out the reason for the ruler's recent extremism and delay in implementing the Code Noir, a decree issued by the French King Louis XIV in the year 1685, regulating the conditions and legal requirements of the slave trade in all over the French colonies. By sneaking into the governor's villa disguised as a slave, Adéwalé discovered that the governor had hired a scientist named Louis Godin to draw a map of the Earth's circumference, in order to provide the French with accurate geographical knowledge that surpassed their competitors. Since Adéwalé was fascinated by the seas, he was amazed by the navigational knowledge, and he knew very well that if the assassins had such information, they would have a huge advantage over their rival Templars. However, Bastien was dismayed at the little information Adéwalé knew. Eventually, Bastien's anger subsided. In order to help the Maroons and fulfill her promise to Augustine, and the Maroons are the resistance group led by Augustine, Madame Bastien submitted a forged statement containing the names of 3 educated slaves, because the mission needed them to take notes with it. Adéwalé changed the statement and saw the French merchant ship, called the Eagle, sailing from the port. But, he soon noticed the waiting pirate fleet and had to defend the exploration ship from them. 2 years after Adéwalé's arrival in Port-au-Prince, the French were in a panic at the increasingly strong Maroon resistance, and the number of slaves being freed by them. The French began imposing stricter curfews, as well as harsher and more frequent punishments. Adéwalé considered this a small price to pay for freedom, but nevertheless, for the ultimate goal of Maroon independence. He left Port-au-Prince and set sail, to free another slave ship, but this time, the French ships guarding the slave ship opened fire on the ship, disabling the ship and causing it to sink, so Eddie climbed aboard and descended below it and rescued as many slaves as possible. In the end, the ship sank while Adéwalé was still inside it, but he managed to escape and swam until he reached the surface of the water. On nearby Cumberland Bay, Adéwalé joined Augustine and Bastien in burying those slaves who had not survived the shipwreck. Adéwalé vowed to kill Lafayette, saying that his creed demanded it and that it would give hope to a whole generation of warriors.
You tried to warn me. We are all guilty. The governor will pay with his own life. My creed demands that I see to it.
C'est l'armée. C'est raté. Revenge is called comfort. Once the fire is gone, another tyrant will take his place.
His death must give this generation of warriors hope. They must not abandon the goal of independence.
And the death of these souls? So, they lead new life.
In the year 1737, Adéwalé decided that it was time to get rid of Governor de Fayette, so he went to his villa and located him in the courtyard, where he was interrogating and torturing the slaves about the location of Adéwalé and the Maroons' hideout. As soon as Adéwalé appeared, de Fayette fled, and despite the overwhelming number of French soldiers in pursuit, Adéwalé eventually killed the governor in a brutal manner. With the death of de Fayette, Adéwalé was forced to leave Port-au-Prince, because his presence would put his safety and the safety of the Maroons in danger. Before leaving, he said goodbye to Bastien and finally gave her the package. He decided to devote his energy to those fighting for freedom. During his time in Port-au-Prince, Adéwalé entered into a relationship with Madame Bastien, and he had a son by her. Adéwalé continued to serve the assassin brotherhood, and at some point, was given a mission alongside Liam O'Brien, who greatly respected Adéwalé. On this mission, the two went to Port-au-Prince to provide assistance following the earthquake of 1751. There, Adéwalé met his son, Babatunde Joseph, and later took him to join the Brotherhood. Adéwalé discovered that Lawrence Washington, who was the Grand Master of the Templars, had stolen the precursor box and the Voynich manuscript from François McCandle, the assassin's mentor in Haiti. Adéwalé sailed after Lawrence, but after arriving in New York, he lost track of the Templar. In 1752, at the suggestion of his son, Adéwalé visited Achilles Davenport, mentor of the colonial brotherhood in North America and the last of Atabé's student. While he was there, Adéwalé collected more supplies for the survivors of the Port-au-Prince earthquake, and warned Achilles that the precursor box had been stolen by the Templars. At the beginning of the 7 Years' War, Adéwalé lent his support to the assassin's French allies, launching several campaigns against the British Royal Navy. During the Battle of Louisbourg, Adéwalé attempted to destroy British reinforcements with fire ships, but his tactic was foiled by the HMS Pembroke, forcing Adéwalé to retreat. And because of his actions in Louisbourg, Adéwalé became a target for the Templars. Later that year, Adéwalé engaged in a naval battle with both Sheikh Cormac and Haytham Kenway, eventually forcing Adéwalé to abandon his ship and flee. The two adversaries eventually confronted each other, with Adéwalé and Haytham having a brief discussion about Edward, with Adéwalé stating that Edward would be ashamed of his son for becoming a Templar. Due to this discussion, Adéwalé was distracted, allowing Shay to approach and stab him. Adéwalé told Shay in his dying breath that killing him would not help him stop Achilles, who had found a way to locate the first civilization. Before succumbing to his wounds, Adéwalé lamented how much Shay had fallen into the Templar's service.
Forgive me, Adéwalé.
You dare beg forgiveness, child? Hell welcomes traitors like you.
Then I go there proudly, knowing I have done right.
It does not matter. Achilles already has what he needs.
At this point, we reach the end of the video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what you think of the video. I hope you stay well until we meet in another video.
Amen.
Adéwalé.